Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. This is episode 86, where I had the immense pleasure of having Amelia Kallman on. She is a futurist speaker author. The book she authored is Diaries of a Shanghai Showgirl. And she had a very interesting story where she literally had something like 48 hours to get out of like Shanghai. And she came to the UK where she became a futurist. A very interesting story she has. And please enjoy the show. If you have time, please subscribe as well. Have a good day, guys. And be awesome. Peace. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. This is episode 86. Today, I am very lucky to have Amelia Kallman. Yes, she is a futurist, speaker, author, and yes, she is here today. How are you today?
I'm pretty good, thank you. I'm glad it's Friday. Getting towards the end of the week, so that's feeling good. And it's great to finally talk to you in person,
Absolutely.
across the screens.
Yes, like in person. One day I shall be doing these more in person, but with the big C rolling around. Yes, you know what I mean. Sue. Yeah, I've got to say, you have lived quite an interesting life, to say the least. Because look, today you are a futurist speaker, and you're an author as well. Like when you were at Marymount Manhattan College, did you see this sort of unraveling like the way it did?
Absolutely not. No. So I grew up as a child actress. My mother was a director. So she realized at a young age that I needed kind of an outlet. And I guess I was a bit of a problem child. So she kind of took me and put me in the theater, which was great. And I loved it. And I grew up doing commercials and some TV work and that kind of thing. And we traveled to New York and spent quite a time there. And then I went to school there. So I studied acting at Marymount Manhattan College.
Yeah.
And then before I graduated, I had just gotten back. I studied Shakespeare at Oxford University for a summer. And I came back and I I went to a party on the rooftop of the Chelsea Hotel. And I crashed it, and there was a guy going around tapping people on the shoulder, saying, "Do I know you?" And people would say no, and he'd say, "Then get the hell out of my house." And he came over to me and tapped me on the shoulder, and I was like, "Oh, great, I'm gonna get kicked out." But instead, he told me I was beautiful, and he told me I could stay. And that man is now my husband. But he kind of took me down this other path, which was he was a nightclub designer.
Yeah.
And designed a lot of burlesque clubs. And so he had all these like beautiful, sexy women hanging around him, and he was directing these shows and stuff. And as we started to go out and things, I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't want him hanging out with all these beautiful women without me being around. So he said, "Well, come up with an act and I'll put you in the show." And so I came up with this act where I write and perform any movie in 3 minutes as a showgirl.
Any movie in 3 minutes.
Yeah. So how we would do it was we would get everybody in the audience to write down a movie on a piece of paper and stick it in a hat. And I would spend the entire first part of the show, which was ended up being an illegal speakeasy that we ran on 26th and Broadway in New York. And it had a little theater with a full chorus line of showgirls singing and dancing.
Oh,
And the first half of the show.
password to get into the place.
Yes, you needed a password. Yeah.
Oh.
And this was before Facebook or before that kind of thing. So everything was word of mouth. Like you really had to know the right person, have the password. And because, it was a small illegal nightclub, we really catered towards celebrities. So, people who couldn't, necessarily go out in public without getting hounded by the press and stuff would come to our club. So one of my most favorite moments ever probably was the time that Bjork asked me for my autograph, which was kind of surreal, right? Yeah, so we had these illegal speakeasies, and yeah, so then halfway through the show, after everybody had kind of decided that I was, just a pretty dumb showgirl there to look good, I would surprise everybody by taking a movie out of a hat and performing that movie in 3 minutes. So that's how I got my burlesque career started. And then I can just keep going. If you have, I could see you have some questions, but
Like, this is the thing. I'm quite intrigued. Like a movie, like any movie in 3 minutes, like that is a tall order, because let's just say the movie catalog is vast and extreme. Trust me, I've tried to go through quite a lot of Netflix over the last few months, and I have not made a dent into it. So what was like one of the most challenging movies someone asked you to do?
well, okay, so I do like King Kong, Titanic, The Godfather, Dracula, Romeo and Juliet. I do Mulholland Drive. I actually won an award for doing that here in London, at a David Lynch cabaret. Yeah, but The Godfather was really difficult, because Kate is only in it for about 15 minutes, and I when there's a couple things, like I always like to pick a movie that everybody knows, so they feel like they're in on it, and kind of understand. So like Titanic's perfect. Everybody knows the ship sinks, it's like
Oh, you've ruined that for me now. I wasn't aware of this. Spoilers, come on now.
And I always like to play the female character, but then and I talk to all these different people and I see everything that's happening. King Kong's one of my favorites. So it's funny, actually, now that I'm talking about it, I'm about to bring these back and do them as films. I just got a green screen for the first time ever. It's only taken me this long, but and I have this idea. I'm gonna bring back my 3-minute films, but I'm gonna cut it in with the movies and stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's a side that I haven't really gotten back to in a while, and I'll continue my kind of story if you want. And then in about 2006, 2007, we could kind of see that the economic crisis was coming, and my boyfriend, who's now my husband, was talking about how Shanghai and how China was going to be the big city, the big power of the next century and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of dared him, saying, well, put your money where your mouth is, let's go to China and open up a burlesque club, And so we did, and we had this beautiful old Buddhist temple that was built in 1933, and it was just perfect, and we transformed it into this gorgeous cabaret nightclub called Amelia Kallman's Chinatown. We did a different show every night, every week. So Wednesdays and Thursdays were in Chinese, Fridays and Saturdays were in English. I had a cast of 10, 6 showgirls, 4 showmen, and we did old school entertainment. So singing and dancing, vaudeville, pre-television, really funny, really sexy, right on the edge of what you could get away with in China. To the point where we had a very big success there. And then we got thrown out of China. So we got word that we had basically like 36 hours to get out of town, or else we were going to prison for 10 years.
Whoa.
Long story. And you can read the story in my book, Diary of a Shanghai Showgirl. It's available on Amazon. But yeah, so we got thrown out of the country. So fast forward a little bit. I ended up here in England. I didn't have a visa. I didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody. We left with 2 suitcases. We lost everything. And it was bad. It was sad times, so that's when I wrote the book, which was really kind of, therapeutic in a way, but now it's gone on to win a couple of awards, and it might be made into a TV series now. So, keeping my fingers crossed on that.
Okay. Yeah.
But, so I'm slowly getting there. Okay. So as soon as I got a visa, I wanted a job, any job, I didn't care. So I had a friend who was going to this innovation conference. And at the time, I don't even think I realized I knew what innovation meant. But I said, let me go along. I'll host your booth for you. I'll talk to people. I'll meet people. I'll network, and maybe somebody will give me a job. So I go, and there was this booth a couple over from ours, and it had all this really cool technology. It had like touchscreen tables and virtual books and augmented reality and holograms. And I was just so fascinated. I'd never seen anything like it. So I kept going over and asking questions, how does this work? What's it do? What's it for? How much does it cost? And they would tell me. And then I would go and get my people and bring them over and say, do you want to see something really cool? And start explaining to them what had been explained to me. And somebody finally said, do you work for us? And I said, no, but I should. And a week later, I was hired as a marketing assistant at a creative technology agency. And there I worked my way up to become their global head of innovation, opening up technology labs in London and Dubai, where people could come and get hands-on with these technologies and start to experience them for themselves and recognize the possibilities and the impact on the future. So what was great about this, though, was the timing. So this was 2013. And that's when Google Glass came out, and that's when the Oculus Rift got kickstarted. So, nobody was an expert on this stuff yet. It was all brand new to everyone. So I really came in at a great time and had this amazing job that I created. The company didn't have this job for me waiting. I kind of was the one saying, we need to be up on this new technology. This is the future. We need to be, thought leaders in this area. So it was an incredible time. And then in about 2017, I went freelance. So because I come from a theatrical background and lots of experience speaking on stage, I found that this was actually a real asset in the technology industry, in that I think because I don't come from a technology background, I have the ability to take something complex and intimidating and make it accessible to people and hopefully explain it in a way that people can understand. Because I really believe that technology is here to enhance the human experience and make our lives better and easier, hopefully. So the last couple of years I've been touring around the world doing talks. I specialize, I guess, I would say in XR. So that stands for extended reality, so virtual augmented mixed reality. And then I guess I've really become kind of known for not just talking about the potentials and the opportunities of all these emerging technologies, but also the potential risks. So I like to consider myself a cyber optimist, but I think it's very important for us to be aware of potential risks and downfalls so that, we don't fall into these kind of traps.
My God, yes. My God. No, I've got to say, that is like a very condensed story indeed. And yes.
That's my 3-minute movie. That's a 3-minute movie of my life,
That'll be it'll be an epic movie. I'll say in 3 minutes. It's like, did you see that? Oh, yes. Fantastic. One of the things I would say, if you should do that 3-minute movie thing and with your green screen, but I would say, I'm not too sure how many days TikTok's got left before it gets quote unquote banned in the United States. But yeah, I think if you started posting those up, and I swear to God, I've drifted into many a TikTok watching spiral. I think, you'll do very well on that platform for sure.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. TikTok's one that I have downloaded several times and done one of these for like an hour and then thought, whoa, like I gotta watch my brain. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. It's something that I study and research. And I think, I guess it's good to just like remember that, our brains are adapting. So every time we go on these kind of these platforms or devices, these kind of things, our brains start to rewire themselves, and the danger there, and I've experienced myself, and I know that other people I've spoken to have as well, is that your attention span, just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So the more time you spend on things like TikTok and stuff, the less time, the less, that you have for like watching a TV show or watching a movie without picking up your phone and without, having that FOMO and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting kind of dilemma because, I'm at the point now where there's other things as well that I'm launching in my own career. And TikTok makes sense in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it's like, how much do I really consciously want to give over chunks of my life and my time and my brain to, this app that uses these algorithms that know me better than I know myself, I don't know if you saw on Facebook this week, I'm not even on Facebook, so this was through some friends in the news and stuff, that they've added, you can ask, if they show you an ad and you don't want to see it, you can say, I don't want to see this isn't relevant to me, or you can say, knows too much, like it knows too much about me. And which basically means that their algorithm is working, it's just scaring me,
Now, the thing what makes me laugh, and like everyone talks about it at times where when you're like just talking around your phone and you mention a product and that product starts magically appearing throughout your feeds, like especially with Google, there's like, yes, like if you got Gmail, it starts appearing at the top of your sort of email list, like going, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about that? And it just goes all the way through. Like Facebook, which I'm on just purely for, how can I say, it's more of a sort of just a communications hub rather than sort of I do anything in depthly on there. And like I would say, I'm maybe more active than the average user because I have to like use it to promote podcasts and stuff like that. But apart from that, nah, I don't go on it. I leave just like on, promote.
Yeah, I extracted myself from it. I guess it was like 3 years ago now. And it was post the election in the States because like that just got messy on Facebook, like, I mean, family falling out and like, and it's just so, and then there was that. And then the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and, but extricating myself from Facebook took me literally 2 days, like literally 2 8-hour working days to take all my information off. And I could have just quit and said like, oh, I don't want to subscribe anymore, just delete my account. But I wanted to make sure that if this was my only opportunity to see what the data that they had on me was, and if I could extract it, and I got to say, there's probably some like old server out there that has all my information. I'm not, I understand that, but I wanted to see if I could take all my data back, if I could, take every post down and all this kind of thing. And so many times I got to the end and I thought I had taken all my data away, extracted myself completely. And then this whole new layer came up that I didn't even know about. And it was actually, the scariest part was right at the end. And it was after I had taken down every single post I'd ever done, every picture and stuff. And in like the back of the settings, I kind of went through every single little thing. And then the bottom 5 or something, you realize how many companies you have, given your consent to use your data, and these are like restaurants in Malaysia and like, I mean, all like hairdressers in Brazil and all this kind of stuff where like I didn't do that, but because I ticked yes to something that agreed that I would give all this information away. I mean, it was astounding.
I can imagine, but like this is the thing. Okay, you're a futurist, right? So basically, technology is your thing. And look, I would like some people go, you love technology, Miwa, but there's other parts of me where I look at the costs of it all and go, if I really loved it, I would most probably be that much more in debt and literally bankrupt. So I like technology a lot, but to sort of go into any sort of social media platform and like go through all the different levels to like remove all that data, I most like not without a long YouTube tuition video, I would have no idea how to do it. No idea at all.
Like, they specifically make it difficult for people to do it, Yeah, definitely. It took the time. I mean, I think anybody can do it, but it just takes a bit of time. Um, and like I said, it's probably still there. The data is probably still there somewhere. And yes, I am a futurist and technology is my bag. And I love what I do in that I study, the cutting edge and what's next. And I make, we look at what's happened in the past and what's happening today, and we can start to predict what's happening in the future. And I mean, that's the idea. And then, COVID comes along and then it's a bit like, whoa. But actually, to be honest, COVID has been very good in a lot of ways for a lot of emerging technologies, and starting to become more integrated within our lives, because there's all of a sudden need for it. So people are embracing it in a way that kind of, needed to happen. It was an industry, the XR industry, which I've been involved in some time. And I host the XR Summit that has been traditionally held in Amsterdam, but this next year it's going to be in Barcelona, fingers crossed, but also online and in the Metaverse. So we're actually doing parts of the conferences in virtual reality. This is an industry that has been ready for to get its break, essentially, and this has kind of happened now with things like augmented reality, virtual reality. I mean, I think Burning Man's going on right now, and there's a bunch of people gathered in the Metaverse, raving and enjoying the DJs and the sculptures and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know they've been doing, and this is not so much with the sort of virtual or augmented reality, but in Fortnite, I know they've done some super big concerts in there. Can't remember the name of the artists, but they've done.
Yeah, so Travis Scott and Marshmello. So Travis Scott, I think he had 12.8 million viewers for a 15-minute concert in Fortnite. And this was during a time when we were locked down, so when people physically can't get together, all of a sudden there's 12.8 million people gathered, which is the largest gathering of a concert viewing ever in our history, which is amazing and really exciting. And then The Weeknd did one just recently. I think that one was on TikTok. Yeah, so it's become this entire new venue. And then you see artists also going through Twitch. Twitch is a big one now for doing concerts and passing the hat around and things.
Yeah, no, that is fascinating, because I somehow see it going down, in our lifetime, like Ready Player One, where people are just sort of they're tuned in to a big network, and they're playing this massive sort of role-playing game. There's part of me which is like, oh, that's sad, but there's another part of me which is quite fascinated by that sort of thing.
You know what? I think I've been thinking about this a lot personally, and it's this kind of evolution. I think we have this idea that all of a sudden tomorrow we're all going to become avatars inside the metaverse. But if you think about it right now, or I mean, I don't know how locked down you are where you are, but it's during something like lockdown, and for me, I'm in London, and we can see people again, but it's still very weary, and and it's socially distanced and all this kind of stuff. So you think about it, you have who you are in your physical reality, so my husband sees me, and and I live in this house, and and occasionally I say hi to my neighbors and that kind of thing. And then we have our digital world, so we're in our digital world right now. This is, how you present yourself, and reaching. So it's you're going from talking to one person to reaching out to the whole world. Anyone can see you. And what we're missing is all those kind of those intermediate groups of people. So even just going to the tube station, the guy at the newsstand, seeing the tube operator in the mornings, going to work, having those little social groups and gatherings, and how you communicate amongst them. So I think my point is that we have this bridge between our physical selves and our digital selves. We already have almost our own digital how we show avatar, how we show up in the world already, because we've had to.
Mm.
um and um and then this is just starting to evolve, like basically it's now things like Snapchat filters, all this kind of stuff. And then, when you're hanging out on Zooms, all these kind of things, this is all stepping stones getting us into hanging out in the 3D
Mm.
um, metaverse. And also, kind of one thing that I'm interested in also is the future of the internet. So like looking at the XR internet, and I have some friends who are working on that right now. And something that's going to be really important there is things like edge computing and 5G. So being able to have the power to make these experiences, better quality with less latency. These are all going to just help enable us move that next step further into embracing this kind of 3D digital reality.
Right. And like with like, let's say the internet 3.0, like, or is it the internet 4.0? I'm really sort of like,
Lost track.
yeah. So you mentioned 5G and sort of like that being involved. Like what, like how do you sort of picture that on a sort of greater scale? Is that going to be a case of just it's going to be the same internet, or is it going to be still more walled gardens with regards to, say, Facebook or like Twitter or something like that, where you have like specific things? Is it, or is it going to be more free?
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good question. One thing I like to say is that the internet is not free. Like we have as a society given up a lot for the internet. There's and also, when I'm doing my work and studies with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, this kind of expectation that everything is free, is something that almost becomes something businesses have to contend with, because you expect it to be for free, but then how do you make the money and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So with 5G and edge computing, it's actually really interesting at the moment. And I just want to bracket this by saying I'm not an expert on this particular topic, but I'm learning about it all the time. And I don't claim to be an expert on anything. I just like to, I'm constantly absorbing stuff and kind of like to share what I know, and hopefully that helps people understand it, and it adds value to people's lives.
Hmm.
But so with 5G and edge computing, what that means is that instead of going through the cloud, which sends signals and data through this large space, it means that it's actually closer to your computer. So the time between the data getting to your computer is just a lot shorter. So it's a lot faster. And where we predicted that this was going to go was in this kind of privatized space. So for instance, like a university campus would have 5G and be edge enabled, and then if you go off the campus, then you have slower internet because, but what's really interesting now is because everybody's working from home and everybody's dispersed, what makes a bit more sense is going for a decentralized model. So everybody is benefiting from the same kind of speed, except that brings in the big question, who's going to pay for it?
Mm.
You're not going to get all the global leaders in the world to decide we're going to fund this program for everyone, so so it just becomes it's a big question, but it's an exciting kind of time to see what happens. And then so you mentioned some of the big social media platforms. I think I'll give you an example of something that caught my eye. So there's a startup in London who I did some work with called Scape, and they geotag artificial reality. So you can have this digital like a digital experience or something, and it can be locked into a physical place. So if I'm going down the street with my phone and I look at a building, I might be able to see, what the history of the building was, what it looked like. I might be able to see if my friends were there before and if they've placed their pictures there. They're a very cool company. Have a look at them. But they've been bought by Facebook for 40 million. So where you have like a company and a new technology that could potentially become a rival, these bigger companies are buying them up. And, I'm not saying in that case, but in other cases, we're also seeing something that happens in the music industry all the time. So like, if you have an artist who you're really pushing and believe in, and you see somebody else who's like them coming up, you'll go and snatch them up and stop their career so that you can keep putting your person up. And so we're seeing that happen with some of the startups and some of these big companies now too. So we are now starting to see governments take an interest in how we can kind of maybe put a cap on the monopoly, or what that would look like, so that some of these smaller companies actually can play. Because the truth is that these bigger companies just have so much money that it makes it impossible for anybody who wants to come up to rival them to do so. So I do think that we're going to see them evolve. For all Facebook's faults, they are at the edge of innovation. They do put a lot of time and money. Google as well, they are invested in the future. I think it's going to be really interesting when Apple come out with their AR glasses. This could be a really big turning point, because all the power would be in your phone. Whereas some of the companies that are coming out now, they still have all the power in the glasses. So they're a bit heavy, they're a bit unstylish. But this could be the next iPad, the next iPod, the next iPhone, the next must-have item for people to have. And right there, that's going to change how we communicate. Taking it from this kind of like heads down, isolated experience into a heads up, eyes open, hands free way of communicating again. I personally think this will be a really good thing for people, making our physical worlds more inclusive, and then choosing when to interact with the digital or when not to.
Yeah, no, like this is the thing. These points bring up a number of things to mind when you especially when you just said inclusive. Like one of the things, like what's been highlighted, I say with this lockdown, is with regards to society in some respects is sort of like slightly splitting. I'm not too sure how wide that is, to people who have access to the internet and like the faster speeds, and to people who have not. There was, I think this was in California, where there was these two girls who were using the Wi-Fi. I can't remember if it was a Taco Bell or something like that, to basically do their schoolwork. And it was like there was a GoFundMe and everything like that to help them out eventually. But those are two girls who managed to capture the spotlight. And it makes me think how many other people, and look, I mentioned America, but that's because that story came to light, but over here as well.
Well, yeah, during this lockdown, it's really shed a light on that, they're already saying the difference between, kids who had parents who taught them every day versus kids whose parents had to go out and work and who didn't get that kind of attention, or who didn't have internet access. All these kind of things, the disparity that we have there is a real problem when it comes to inequality that is on us to figure out. It is becoming, it's not fair, at this point. It has to it's crazy to say, but it almost makes you think like the internet is a human right. But that's almost where we're at, right?
Yeah, I think
and you
sure.
And you had mentioned this kind of polarization of people. This is something that I'm also been looking at quite intently, and also kind of along through the lens of things like deep fakes. So deep fakes are when you see videos or hear sounds that aren't real, and what the effect is on a society where we can no longer trust what we see and what we hear. So, for instance, 4 years ago, there was that video of the US president talking about grabbing a woman. He had to apologize for it, one of his only apologies. don't get me started. But now
Yeah.
you'd say that was a deep fake. I didn't say that. They made that some robot, some bot, put words in my mouth, and that wasn't me. So what happens when we live in a world where nobody has to take responsibility in that way? So if you can't prove it, then you can't defend it. If you can't, all these kind of things. And what that means is that people then start to silo and polarize and say, well, this is the news source I trust. This is who I listen to. This is who I listen to. And they just rub up against each other. There's no give or take. There's no commonality of what we can trust and what we can't trust.
Yeah, no, like this is the thing. Yes, the whole deep fake thing, like it was 4 years ago. It was like, oh, it was very much a Black Mirror type thing, and you're like kind of like seeing it on the fringe coming in. Now, it is even, it's quite scary.
I mean, and when it comes to like extortion, we're seeing this now in a corporate sphere where people are getting voicemails or even video of their CEO saying, I need you to release these funds into my account right now, because such and such happened. And you're seeing the person and you're hearing the person and you've known them 10 years. So you go ahead and do it. And it turns out that was a deep fake. And the evolution of this, could be, well, yeah. I mean, there's. I'm not going to get started. Actually, it's a whole rabbit hole there. But yeah.
Yes, I got it. Oh my Lord! No, like you're going to have a sort of two forms of verification before you actually do anything over the phone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, more than that. Yeah. It's.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like going back to, having to see somebody in person, eye to eye, or get something handwritten, or, I mean, it is crazy. Like, what are the answers here? It's almost like, also, there's a big argument to back things up analog now, because, should something happen, there's we start to lose everything, There's a lot of value that we keep in the cloud and that we keep online in this data.
Yeah, there was this random TV show on Netflix where like these kids from like a town, they go on a school field trip, and when they come back, they've come back to it seems like it's their town, but it's like, yeah, there's no adults around, and basically it's just these kids, and it's kind of, as time goes by, it goes a little bit Lord of the Flies-ish, but like then this whole town doesn't have internet, and they were like going, yeah, what's this music? Because they were trying to do a school dance just to have some sort of realm of like normalcy, and it was like going, yeah, no one can access like Apple, like iTunes or anything like that, because it's like it's all on the internet, and we don't have that anymore. And it was just like kind of like, yeah, the reliance on the internet, and like if it did just vanish one day, like that, like movies, music, all of that,
photographs, you know. I mean, that's what I mean. We have our identities, this identity that we want to portray of ourselves online. And more, I see that disparity between people in real life and people in their online life. Not the online, not necessarily reflecting, the offline. I mean, you see it all the time, day in, day out. People, especially during these times and things. And yeah, so it's almost like to lose that whole identity would be massive.
Like, so with regards to yourself, what has been your favorite piece of technology over the last, say, 5 years?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it's funny. The first one that came to mind was my Bose AR sunglasses, which are my sunglasses that play music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple, but I love it, and I take them with me everywhere I go. And Yeah, and they're very cool. And then, I mean, I don't know. I'm just like, right now I'm looking at this little box that I have, that it's this little 4G box that I had to get when we locked down, because my office is up in the top of my house and I had to upgrade my internet and everything like that. But for talks like these where you just really can't have internet failures, I've got this little 4G box that I plug in. I put my SIM card from my phone in, and it gives me the best internet. And it means that when I go camping or when I'm, on the road or something, I can always bring it with me just to ensure that I have great access to internet everywhere I go.
Ah, superb, superb. Now, now,
But actually, wait a second. Sorry, can I answer another part of that?
yeah,
Because maybe the most cutting. Oh, actually, there's multiple. If I'm talking about like cutting edge, like new technology, there's two that I'm going to talk about. So
right.
one is called Ultra Leap, and this allows you to feel virtual touch in midair. So it uses high-speed audio waves, so ultrasound technology, and they send currents up in the air. So you don't have to touch anything, but you can feel like you're touching buttons or flipping switches or turning dials, all these things. So what we found is that, in the metaverse or, just in general, we can do things with gestures now,
Mm,
but the brain is not happy and not satisfied because the brain wants to know I pressed that button.
yeah.
And so what this does is this gives that kind of feedback, even when you're just gesturing in the metaverse or in thin air. But then you also think about it right now, they came out, I think it was a year or so ago, they said that every screen on McDonald's that you go to order, the touch screens, 100% of them have fecal matter on them, right? So that's disgusting, right? Think about ATM machines.
Oh,
Think about like those little buttons that you press when you go to walk across the street. Like nobody wants to touch that stuff anymore, So this is, to me, like a great solution for all these kind of problems, and then also helping to solve, the health crisis that we're in right now, So love that technology. That's my favorite. And then another one that just came to mind was this one called Voxen. So this is a startup out of Australia, and I come from kind of like a technology agency background, and
mm,
we always get these calls all the time. So I want this hologram. So basically, like, holograms are a myth. They don't actually exist, in the idea of the Princess Leia. That's the idea,
yeah, yeah.
Princess Leia. That's what everybody wants. So this product that they have, called Voxen, this is the closest thing I've ever seen to it. And I'm a hard person to impress. And I was very impressed with this. So basically you can have, you can stand all around it. So you can have a 360 hologram that appears in front of you, and you can interact with it through a dial. And it's the most impressive kind of, I still use quotes because a true hologram just kind of like appears out of nowhere,
Yeah.
but this is the closest thing I've seen to that. So that is very cool. And again, with things like, so it's demonstrating things like 5G right now and being able to do phone calls. So being able to FaceTime, and it's like you and I talking, but having your 3D 360-degree head
Mm.
talking in front of me, it's cool stuff.
Excellent, excellent. I've got to say, yeah. No, I've got to say, like, when you said the whole like McDonald's screen, I was like, oh, like the pictures in my head which came to it as I going, I haven't had McDonald's for some time, but that's another thing. We'll be like, no, I don't want McDonald's ever, ever. But like, yeah, but having something which you can like just simply just like, yeah, if you type in and like just in thin air and have that sort of response, I imagine that's going to be coming more so with a higher degree of accuracy over time. But that is, wow, yeah. And I can imagine that with regards to computer games as well, like in the realm. No, that is fantastic. I like that.
Well, yeah, and incorporating it into things like virtual reality. So you're seeing something virtual, hearing something virtual, and touching something digital. It tricks the brain that much more into believing that it's having a real experience. And then that brings up all kinds of other questions too. Like, for instance, there's things like gaming transfer phenomenon, which is actually recognized by the World Health Organization. and that's when you spend too much time in a video game, you start to see and hear things from the video game inside your real life. So people who play Minecraft a lot experience this. So they start to see things in boxes or hear things from the game. And that's just on a 2D screen. So if you think about it, if we're engaging all our senses in this 360 space, the chances of having that kind of impact could be greater. And I have friends who develop inside these virtual worlds, and they say that, you know, after work, when they leave the headset behind, their instincts to walk into traffic, because, you know, inside VR, you can walk into traffic and nothing happens, you
Yeah.
know, and it's this kind of dislocation that has happened because during that time, your brain has started to rewire itself and decide this is where I am. And it takes, you know, we're going to have to look at that, how we transition back into the real world or whatever, to avoid those kind of accidents. But then this brings up things like, you know, the black market and the dark web coming into these spaces as well. And, you know, and what, you know, how we patrol that, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I wrote a report, I guess it was 2 years ago now, for Lloyd's of London on the emerging risks of the new realities. It's still out there and it's still quite relevant. But yeah, it really explores these kind of areas.
Yeah, it's going to be a case of how much access will they sort of give in the virtual world compared to how connecting it with the real world. Because with regards to sort of online transactions, and if you think about like sort of like um not freemium, but like you know, like any games like sort of like Candy Crush or like um any like sort of continuously pay mobile game, if that's going on and you've got all of your senses engaged, and like, you know how people can get really intense with that, and you mentioned Minecraft with the 2D, I can see people like paying out a lot of money to progress in a game which is actually not feels real, but is real in many respects if you're actually having that physical reaction. So
Yeah,
yeah, it is
and
going to
it
be.
is real. I mean, you just nailed it. You know, there's we call it virtual reality and stuff, but the brain doesn't know that it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah. Line from The Matrix comes to mind, with all it is just a series of electrical responses. Like, so yeah, that is definitely, ooh. That's I wouldn't say scary, but it's definitely food for thought for the future. And hope, let's hope there are better people than I to sort of like put in some sort of restraints and measures, or like, yeah, just to like protect people from themselves in some respects, because yeah.
Well, you know, and you think about it, things like the dark web and stuff going into the metaverse, if people can experience or do things that are illegal, socially frowned upon, that they can't do in their real life, you know, and have those kind of experiences, we don't yet know what the impact is there. So if you can get away with something in the metaverse, does that make somebody more inclined to think that they can get away with doing something in real life? And then if they are committing acts of crime, you know, under what we think of as crime within the metaverse, you know, is that something that we can that is punishable, and how do you punish that?
Hmm.
Or is that something that we treat with, you know, um, mental health facilities and therapy? I mean, it's this whole kind of new world that is being unleashed that a lot of people haven't quite considered and looked at yet.
No, I think it's one of those things, because it's so big and there is so many sort of different paths and avenues to go down with it. There is going to be lots of things which will be missed with regards to that. And now with regards like with the sort of darker nature of the human race as it can be, yeah, there are going to be quite a lot of like sort of discussions which I think need to be had. If you're doing like, if you've got a game which is technically reality, just like a hair's wisp away from reality, what what can you let in that game, because look, Grand Theft Auto, which is quite clearly a game, but let's just say if anyone acted like that in real life, there would be there's no regen in a your nearest hospital or coming out of a nearest police station. They would lock people up immediately. And if they're in it, like if they've got a game which is just away from that, yeah, I think some people might have a defense there, like I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let me see. Like, using my supreme cosmic powers, I can only use it like towards the end of a podcast. Like, what wish would I be able to fulfill for you? And it can't be like 50 million donuts, because I can't do that. It's just irresponsible. What wish would that be?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question. What wish? You know, it's funny. It's funny. I'm at a place in my life where I have a lot of good things, you know, and I don't wish for too much. I gotta say, I mean, I guess my biggest wishes now are to be able to travel again and to get on planes again. I was watching a movie yesterday and he got on a plane and I almost cried.
I want to go with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like almost getting verklempt just thinking about it. Yeah, I really miss going outside of my house and my world and seeing other people. I can't wait for the time I get to see my whole family back in the States again. Those are probably my biggest wishes. And then I guess I don't know. This is just coming to me, and it might not make, I don't know how much sense it makes, but almost for people to just be nicer to everyone. Like, everybody just needs to be a bit like nicer and understand that we're all going through a hard time right now. You know, this is a trauma on everyone, and I think, you know, cutting some people some slack, and you know, the trolls, like, you know, it's just ridiculous. You know, I saw in the paper today there was somebody who wanted who was putting an ad out for an employee, and they asked for a happy person, and they got told that they were discriminating against miserable people. I was like, no.
Yeah, and I just that'll be the person just turned. This is why you need not apply. Thank you.
Yeah.
Move on. Oh my Lord. Like that it's just sad that you had to like put down, I just want to have a happy person, someone just cheery, just like, you know what I mean? I turned to them kind of like a big dumb Labrador. They was like, hey, I want to be your friend and just be happy. Like,
I mean, honestly, like, you know, I've worked with enough people now that goes such a long ways. You know, just having a positive attitude and a bit of a sense of humor, you know?
Yeah. But then for people to go, you're discriminating against the people who are not happy. You're just simply.
Well, why can't we? I think maybe I don't know.
You're just like, what? Yeah, I understand. Look, yeah, I think the world today, and I think it might be the 2020, like has driven some people a little bit bonkers. They've got a little bit too much cabin fever, maybe. Yeah. But I think it's one of the things I think people need to do more so is have conversations. I don't mean like, oh, how are you? How are the kids? How are the family? Just like, yeah, proper conversations. They might not be the most comfortable things sometimes to have, but I think through good conversation where like you can bring it aside, the other person can bring aside, I think that's where growth and that's where the positivity lives. Because if you like go, right, what you're saying makes no sense, and they go, what you're saying makes no sense, but this thing we just talked about, there's bits of that what does make sense. Yes, that's the way forward.
Yeah. Well, and to your point too, people can't be afraid to have those conversations because, you know, there's this whole cancel culture thing, I think makes people afraid to have the hard conversations conversations that need to have,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that's, you know, when it comes to a democracy, being able to have points of views and opinions and be able to speak and to learn, you know, from others, I think that is it becomes a threat to democracy when people are too afraid to ask questions and to talk about how they feel and their opinions.
Yeah, and like this is the thing, like it leads to fear, it leads to resentment, and then ultimately that like that very thing which you like everyone loves, like their democracy, their house, their home, their homeland, like however you want to describe it, before you know it, it's torn apart and it is gone. And it like too many people are just like, yeah, I tried to speak out, I tried to learn something new, and I got punished for it. And
Yeah.
too much punishment doesn't lead to any sort of growth whatsoever. And I think if it continues like this, we'll fall back. Like we might go ahead on technology wise, but we'll fall back on a sort of social level. We'll fall back on that sort of next level of growth. And like, yeah, Gen Z will inherit a world which is less fruitful. And like, I don't know what's after Gen Z. Is it Gen Alpha?
Gen Alpha, yeah. Well, and also you don't want it to all just go like gray and beige. You know, you want to have the colors. You want to have like, you know, all the different parts of the spectrum. You know, because that's what makes it a beautiful world. It doesn't, you know, there's a chance that it all becomes homogenized and we're all saying the same thing, thinking the same thing, doing the same thing, and then where our brains are controlled, you know, we become very much more susceptible to bad things.
Yeah, but this is the whole thing. It, like when it's face to face, like amongst your group of your peers, you'll be saying these things to just fit in, to just keep like going along, just to keep it all level. And yeah, it'll be a case of, yeah, in that type of environment, you don't learn anything. In that type of environment, you don't grow. And there will be some people which will not be in the best place. And like they will either be in a world of trouble, like mentally, or they'll just be literally trying to scream out, like, I want to know this. Why can't I learn this? And like that might lead to some extreme reaction in some way, which it could have been resolved with a half an hour conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
But yes, uh, Emily, can you tell the lovely people out there how they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So my name, ameliakallman.com is my website. And then also on Twitter, my handle is Amelia Kallman. And that's AmeliaKallman.
Yes, like for a moment there, I did almost call you Emily. I don't know why. I think I had a sort of flashback of a friend in my summer camp days, but that's another story. But yes, Emily, thank you for coming on today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure having you on. I'd like to say thank you once again. I'd like to say thank you to you, my friends out there, to my life warriors. Stay well, stay safe, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world and then some. Have a great day, guys. Peace. And we are